Welcome to A Pint with Seaniebee, coming to you from the basement of a club in London near Charing Cross. It's called The Library. I unfortunately went to Charing Cross Library to meet my guest, which is a bit fucking stupid. But I'm here today with a guy I don't know an awful lot about. He's been referred to me by a previous guest on the podcast. He is, by all accounts, a brilliant journalist who has been writing since he was in his teens, and he's recently opened his own creative stroke ad agency type thing, which we're going to hear a little bit about. Welcoming to the podcast, Mick Wright. How are you, sir?
Hello, I am all right. Yeah, I've been on a 3-hour, 50-minute National Express coach today, so I'm a
you're
sweaty
from Norwich.
mess. Yeah, I am. Like one of your previous guests, John Lynch, my best friend of since we were 11.
What can you tell me about Norwich that he already didn't? I just went straight to Delia Smith and Norwich City Football.
Alan Partridge is the one that people tend to go to. When we were growing up there, it was really backward. It's not really like that anymore. University of East Anglia's got a lot bigger. What used to be the old art schools turned into a dedicated arts university called the Norwich University of the Arts. So because of that, and because of this bigger student population, it's become more arty. They've got like coffee chains that have sprung up that aren't national coffee chains. It's like there's a whole area that used to be complete shithole when we were growing up has now been rebranded as the Lanes and has all these boutiques and stuff. So yeah, Norwich.
It's doing a Brighton on it, is it?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it kind of has that Brighton-esque. It's like it's Brighton but not by the sea. The only trouble with Norfolk to a certain extent, I mean, the National Writing Centre's just opening up there, and some writers of colour have been saying, why have you put it in Norwich, like one of the most ethnically homogenous places in the country? And it's kind of true. Norwich is super white because there was no reason for immigrants to go there because the transport links are bad and there weren't a lot of jobs, which has led to it being sometimes a kind of ignorant place. It's sort of better than when we were growing up there.
You lived in Ireland for a bit.
I lived in Ireland for 8 years.
I
loved it. I would move back there in a heartbeat. I feel like some ways Dublin is sort of my adopted hometown. It's better. I just liked it. You know, Dublin people will talk to you.
Well, you know, it's a great place if you're a writer because it's steeped in all that sort of stuff. Then you kind of walk down the banks of the canal and you kind of, you know, I mean, it can be a bit waffly, but you know.
I've got a good habit of picking up a pub that becomes my local. So when I was in Dublin, in Rathmines, there's a pub called the Blackbird, and I would just go there all the time and had a tab running. It was always good. It's good to find that, particularly when you're writing. Sometimes good not to be in the office or in your house.
Were you a smart kid when you were growing up? Were you always interested in English and writing, or when did the sort of writing bug take hold? Because I know you started very early, right?
I've been writing for money since I was 16, and then I really like writing all the time when I was like 11. Very smart kid, yeah, probably, but I think it took me till I went to university to realise how being smart has fewer practical uses in the real world than you're led to believe.
Yeah, totally agree.
It's like, I don't know, I was the first person in my family to go to university of any kind.
What was your family background?
My mum and dad were both in the Navy, and then they were salesmen people.
Did you have a supportive family?
Yeah, my parents were really supportive. There's no history of writing in my family at all. There's no history of writing at all.
Where did you come from?
I don't know, man. I just my mum read to me a lot when I was a kid, and I think that probably I had an English teacher who was really good, and she realised I was writing poems, and then she gave me Leonard Cohen's book Bird on a Wire, and then I used to finish my English work really quickly, and we were sat in class based on how much of a little bollocks you were. So I was allowed to sit at the back because I was really well-behaved kid, but this sort of went off the boil later on. But so she let me write my own stuff when I'd finish my assignments, which I would finish really quickly because it was just sort of found writing came easy. I got suspended from school for writing a seditious newspaper about the teachers when I was 14, which, funny enough, was the thing that stopped me getting bullied, really. So 14, 15, stopped getting bullied after that. Because it's sort of like, he's not...
Satirical comedy?
Yeah, but because I've been getting picked on so much, and there was like 2 or 3 teachers that were nice, like my history teacher, my English teacher, but the rest of them kind of didn't really like me and thought I had a bit... I didn't have a bad attitude, I worked really hard, I got good grades, but I'm not good with authority. So I had a biscuit-coloured duffel coat, and you were meant to have a black duffel coat, and I was like... I'm going to wear this because my mum's bought me this. Yeah, but
So did your publication only get 1 issue?
It got 3 issues and then I got suspended.
So it was underground? And
it was like Samizdat.
This?
The reason I did it was a kind of howl of rage at the point that I was picked on constantly, and most of the teachers did nothing about it. You'd complain and they'd go... You
were picked on by boys in your class?
Yeah, boys. And I was friends with girls mainly, and then by the time I was in 6th form, totally flips, of course, because a lot of girls are my friends, and because of that, the lads are like, fair play, you know. Yeah. But yeah, it was just like, I got picked on because I cried easily and I was an emotional kid. I was quite intense. Not such an angry person anymore, but a lot of it goes through in the writing and stuff.
Was the anger generated by bullying, basically?
Yeah, I had a chip on my shoulder because of that, and also just
I don't think it's unreasonable.
Yeah, maybe, but also I have a fierce sense of injustice, and also I really, really, really hate authority. But I just have a natural dislike for authority. It's funny, my dad went in the Navy, but he was growing up in Taunton in the 70s. There were no jobs. He just thought, right, I'll go in the Navy. He's naturally not disposed to authority, but he kind of got it together because the Navy was the best option. But
what happens in a world with no authority, though?
Oh, I'm not saying I don't like any authority, but I like... It's people who throw their weight around. You know, it's jobs-worthy people. It's people. It's people who are unfair. It's where the rules are
bouncers and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's where in my early 20s, I got a lot of shooings because people would give me abuse, and I would just be like, right, well, I'm gonna fight back, and that was like, it's not a good thing. It's like not a good move.
Yeah.
But I've learned to be a bit more cautious about it now.
Was there the power of the pen then that you felt you could sort of escape some of this torment rising in you early? Or is that
I don't know. I think I just realised I was just quite good at putting words in straight lines that appeal to people. I've always been interested in journalism, about writing about uppity way of saying speaking truth to power or whatever. I'm always interested in the underdog or the people who are trying to speak up for that. And I think probably some of the problems with journalism sometimes is that people aren't very good at doing that, particularly in political journalism. It's all a bit chummy. A bit like that in music as well now, to be honest. I found that when I was a music journalist. I became a music journalist about 20 years too late, but, you know, say born too late.
But you got out of school. Did you go to college?
I went to university.
When you started writing at 16, what was that about?
Just like selling short stories or writing, like trying to sell articles, and it was not a lot then, it was just a bit. I just sold my first bit of writing when I was 16, made some money out of that, but it was nothing consistent. You know, I worked in bars the whole time I was at university. And
did you do English in university?
No, I did education studies, so I did
so you were
education
be a good
policy.
Teacher.
There was no history going to university in my family. There was always a thought that I would go, and then my history teacher said, "Oh, you could go to Oxford or Cambridge if you wanted," and he went to Oxford, and I went to look at Cambridge because it was nearer, and I ended up going there, although I had a very odd entrance, like an interview thing, because at the end of it they said, "Well, why do you want to come to Cambridge?" I said, "Oh, I don't really." And they said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, you know, I've been outside, and it was all very kind of Hogwartsy, and even the college I went to, Homerton, is a higher percentage of state school kids and stuff than most colleges, but I just thought, well, you're not going to let me in, so I'm not going to sort of beg." And then I found out years later when I graduated from the admissions tutor that was kind of the question that pushed me over the edge to come in, because they were like, "This kid's interesting."
I started working advertising when I was 18, and I was up against people in a course that was mainly post-grads, and I was only just out of school. There's no way I was going to get this, and I was going off to Denmark to smoke spliffs, and I said that at the interview, and I also said piss and fuck at the interview, because I knew I was going to get it. And then they rang me and said, "We're going to give it to you." And then again, a couple of years later, the guy Murrah who hired me said, "It's because you said piss and fuck."
Sometimes they're looking for something.
I was just being myself. And other people you put on your pitch facade. I suppose when you're trying to get a job, especially at that age, it's just, it's see-through. And, you're nervous. I wasn't nervous because I didn't expect to get it as well and stuff like that. So I ended up not going to Denmark and not doing any spliffs until I was in my late 40s. And
I've never been good with spliffs. They just make me sleepy.
No, I decided not to do any drugs because I would like them probably too much. I mean, I'm Irish. I have the booze gene, and I smoke cigarettes, and I was starting work really young and a career really young, and I just thought, you know what, there was a lot of ecstasy around at the time and stuff like that, and I said I was not going to bother. I
got turned off pills way before I was old enough to do pills, because you remember this thing, Leah Betts was this girl she's this girl in England who took 1E and then just she died, right? Yeah. And then it was like she was the thing that they said in in lessons at school all the time, and the pictures her parents consented to the pictures being put out of her in hospital, and it was so terrifying that I was just like, I'm not doing pills.
I think my generation, my class got into that as well, because it was almost like in Ireland, the drug problem gets to a point where it triggers an ad campaign that's vicious, and whatever kids are most susceptible in that little gap don't, because there wasn't a lot of drugs around in my so my friends, but like, we knew that there was heroin and all over Dublin, but we'd be scared straight off it, you know.
I had an uncle who died recently. He was a smackhead as well, and so, you know, or at least did a lot of heroin in his time. And my dad had always made a big point about that. But I think my thing with not doing drugs was I somehow realised, I'm very prone to depression, and this is kind of like this message in the rock that goes down all the one side of my family. It's like, you know, like Brighton Rock, it just says depression right the way through. And when you go back, I'm sort of the first person that's kind of accepted it as a thing that's a thing, because other people in my family, when you go back through generations, they'll say, oh, well, she used to take to her bed or whatever. But like nobody gave it a name. Well, it didn't really have a name then.
Black Dog.
Yeah, the Black Dog.
Do you mind talking about your depression, or do you not like to? Or
I've written about it loads. I talk about it. Yeah, the best thing I've written about it is a thing that's on Medium about. We talk about it being like a tightrope, and also just this notion of like once you've been in the hole, you're aware that the hole is there. The best approach to mental health that I've found for myself is some mindfulness, meditation, stuff like that. I think you should take pills if they work for you. Definitely. I did never really work for me. Plus, the trouble with being a writer is you need some emotional difference. So, or at least for me, it didn't work. Medication was very dulling. Yeah. But I don't know. I'm kind of
my girlfriend has very serious depression as well, and she's also a believer in talking about it. The Irish approach was have a cup of tea and be grand, you know, which is the wrong thing. But this idea of falling into the hole, one of the things we're working on is that once you fall in, you do know then that you will come out of it, because the earliest parts when you get so freaked out that you won't come out of it, knowing that there will be a brighter day in 2 days' time, or maybe 3, or maybe 1, and how to manage through that time is one of the things we're working on, and I was interested to get some tips from you on
being able to speak to other people who've been in that position is good. I always quote, there's a brilliant bit in The West Wing where Josh has had this post-traumatic stress thing, and Leo comes to him, and he's been hiding it, and they find out, and then Leo tells him the story. He goes, you know, a man falls in a hole, he doesn't know how he's going to get out, and a doctor comes along and he goes, hey doc, I'm in this hole, can you help me out? The doctor throws a prescription down. The lawyer comes along and says, well, how much money have you got? I'll help you if you tell me. And then finally his friend comes along, and the friend jumps in the hole, and he goes, Joe, what are you doing? Why have you jumped in the hole? He says, I've been down here before, I know the way out. And it's like,
that's great.
Yeah, I think talking to other people, finding ways around it, it's like finding a personal approach to it is important. But I talk about it like the tightrope, because I think for a long time I wasn't aware of the tightrope. I was on the tightrope, but I wasn't aware of it. So when I fell off, I'd be like, well, what happened? And then when I was back on tightrope, I'd be really excited because I'm moving along really fast and think, I am king of the world, this is amazing, right? And then you fall off the tightrope again. You think, well, how the fuck that happened? I thought I was doing brilliantly. Whereas now, like once I know the tightrope is there, it's like, okay, well I can't get rid of it. I just know I'm on it, and I need to be aware of it, and I need to allow people around me to be aware of it. People who care about me to say, you seem a bit manic, which is difficult because you can get quite edgy with that, or you seem down, like people can see those signs. It's quite difficult because sometimes you're sad, you're not depressed, you're just sad. Stuff's happened and you're justifiably sad. It can be frustrating if people know that you've had depression in the past, because they'll say to you, oh, I think, and then you sometimes feel like, well, don't define me by that. So that can be tricky.
My cat died.
I'm kind of bummed out at the moment because I am skint, and like there's a few things that are going to come through that will help out, but I'm like skint. I feel down, but I don't feel down. I'm not depressed. When I was depressed, you don't feel the worst kind of depression. The point that I think pushes people really to the edge, in my opinion, is this sense of not feeling anything. Like the absence of feeling is the worst part, where you just feel something good happens, but you're not.
Someone said to me, close to me, said once that it was like the television set when it's just snow in her brain.
That's exactly right.
And she gets in on herself because she doesn't feel that's a good enough excuse to be down. You know what I mean? So
I had a very good friend who died when she was 28. My friend Lucy, I've written about her as well. She's an incredible person, but she had this condition EB, which is if you get hurt, you don't really heal. So she looked
covered in bruises.
Well, she looked like like a little old lady in her 80s by the time of her mid-20s. Partly because she chose to move away from home. Her brother is still alive, and he didn't choose to move away from home, so it was easier because...
Genetically, he has it too?
Yeah, which is an interesting choice on a parent's side, but they're Catholic, and they have another daughter who doesn't have EB. But Lucy's a really amazing person, and always wanted to be a journalist, was a really good writer, and whenever I was in London, I'd go and see her, and we'd hang out, and I'd stay at her house and stuff. And remember talking to her about depression. So I said, I feel shit about it, Luce, because she was in constant pain all the time. She had to crack lollies and all this kind of stuff. Euphemistic way of calling them, but So, and I just say, well, it seems very self-indulgent of me to say to you, I feel like shit because you are you live in she said to me once that pain for her was like a radio that's being slightly out of tune. The pain was always like that static in the background. Yeah. But her thing, and it helped quite a lot, was she was like, well, this is a pain that you are suffering. It's not a good thing to look and say, oh, there are people in the world that have it worse off.
No.
Because mental pain is,
fully valid.
Yeah. The tricky part I had was I couldn't write. When I've been at my most depressed, I haven't been able to write. I define myself by being able to write. So if I can't write, what am I? And I used to say that. I went to therapy when I was in Dublin, and I used to say that to the therapist quite a lot. And she would go, "Well, I don't understand." She never really understood that. She'd go, "Well, like you're good at other things." I'm like, "Yeah, but that's what I am."
Yeah.
So you're not defined by your job, but being a writer is not a job, and it's not a job.
I get it.
It's it goes beyond that. Like stuff I do in this agency I've started, that's a job.
Yeah.
But writing is not.
Yeah, my girlfriend's the same thing. I know she's an exceptional writer, but sometimes she just can sit there for hours staring and she can't move. Yeah. And then sometimes she will just go bang and piss out the most amazing stuff in like less than half.
But that's a bit of the curse, see, because if you have got the natural ability to do it easy, when it doesn't come, it's really tough.
Yeah.
Whereas some people I know who've worked harder at it, that weren't naturals necessarily, but have learned to be good. It's sort of, you've got processes. I never planned essays when I was a kid. I just wrote them. Yeah. And then I have to pretend I planned them because the teachers required you to plan them. So, it's...
So how did you get on in Cambridge? Did you hate it?
It was good, but I went to a college that was pretty working class. It was about 90% women in my first year. It balanced out for men a bit as a couple of years went on. I didn't mind the posh bits of it. I mean, my first week there, I was in the middle of town, and some very posh guy said to me, "What school did you go to?" And I said, and he went, "Oh no, I meant like, is that a school?" Because he meant like Winchester, Eton, Harrow, Stowe, like
He said with marbles rolling around in his nose.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I don't mind it. And like, there's as many nice posh people as there are, like But some of it was difficult from that respect, and. I had a girlfriend at one point who could never understand why I didn't want to go out for dinner with them all the time. And it was because I literally don't have the bunts to do that. I need to go and work. But no, I liked it. So journalism-wise, I came out of university. The misnomer about Cambridge or Oxford or any of these elite universities is that, you'll do amazing when you come out because whatever. It can be true depending on what you're doing, but... For people who do really well in journalism stuff, a lot of them do well because they've got parental money behind them to afford them to go and do the high-profile jobs for free. So I couldn't do that. I didn't have any money. So I went and worked for Pensions World magazine, which is based down in Croydon, because they offered me a proper wage so I could afford to rent somewhere and stuff. But pretty quickly, I was there for 14 months, learned my craft, learned how to do editing marks and all this kind of stuff that nobody does anymore anyway, but back then... And then a job came up on Stuff magazine. It was 2007. The new iPhone was launching. Tech journalism was on an upswing. I applied for that job. I sent the most cocky letter possible. It's like, really, if you don't hire me, you're making a massive mistake. They were like, who's this prick? Asked me in for an interview. It went well. I worked there. And then after that, a job came up at Q. I'd always wanted to be a music journalist. I was the kind of guy who bought old copies of music papers from second-hand shops. So I bought all that shit, and then I went and worked at Q, and I was there 9-10 months because it was a magazine in... It's not crisis, I mean, it had... Paul Rees had been editor there for a long time, so it was kind of stale. They were in the middle of a redesign. I was brought in as the youngest front section editor they'd ever had at that point. First thing that happened on the first day was basically made clear to me that one of the other section editors thought I was complete. What the fuck was I even doing there? And I later found out.
What age were you?
Right. I was 23, but the thing is, other people who'd come in to interview for the job had come in with a lot more experience in the music press, but kind of arrogant about it. Whereas I came in with a flat plan, which I know people listening don't know what that is. Basically, you plan out every page of the magazine, you do little squares, and I don't know why I'm drawing it they can see. But anyway, I'd done that. I flat planned out a section with these are the new features and all that kind of stuff. So I came in, and the publisher just went, "This guy's young. Look, he's fucking hungry for it." So they let me in, but I did all right there. But it was depressing. It really depressed me. I was living in this flat in Hackney with this Colombian music producer and his girlfriend, who I liked, but it was kind of crazy, and I was just in this room with damp, and then I would just like schlep into the office, get treated like crap, schlep home again.
Yeah.
And it was worse because I'd always wanted to be a music journalist, and it turned out like, oh, guess what? It was okay, like getting free
But
records.
You're not meeting Iggy Pop, right?
Yeah, well, I met a lot of good people. I met Tom Jones. I met like.
Yeah, who was the best you interviewed?
I didn't get to interview many people because I was the
Editor
of the section. But like, the Q Awards is amazing. Like, they go to a little pub afterwards, and like everyone's in there. McCartney could be there, or like members of the Stones. So it's crazy. And like some of that was great. I really like the comedian Josie Long, and I managed to get her to present an award at the Q Awards and stuff. So it was good stuff. Met some rappers I like. It was good, but it wasn't good enough to make it.
But I mean, interesting the amount of people who do that every fucking day for 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
You know? And
yeah,
you know,
so I bounced out of there after 9
I'm
months.
skinned now, you know, but you're also not prepared to put up with doing... Someone said on my podcast, I've referenced this a couple of times, we only have 30 summers left. Not you, me.
Yeah.
I'm 50 in July.
Yeah.
30 summers left. We only think about this when we're 15, and the last 5 are usually shit, right? So I just chucked advertising when I was 47 when I heard this, and I just went, fuck it. Now, I'm not quite skint yet because I had a few bobs saved because I wanted to do this, but I don't know what I'm going to do. I've written books on it. Maybe that might come, something might come with that, but it's much more...
I was young then. It was real. Like, I could have held on, but it was just making me sad, and then I just went freelance, and that was kind of good. I got into Wired and wrote a couple of big features for them, which was great. But in the gap between that, so I left Q, I went freelance, and then Stuff said, oh, can you come back and be assistant editor on the website, because it's just shit, we need help, right? So I came back, and in the interim, I'd committed to doing something for Wired, and so I'd done some stuff for Wired, but it hadn't been published yet. Now, someone who didn't particularly like me in the publishing company told the senior people there that I had done stuff for Wired that Stuff considered their competitor, which was just a laugh, right? Because
and so what? You're
so but I'd come back into Stuff to work, so I was on a permanent job there, and so my team and stuff liked me, and then one day they had been going through my email secretly and were like, "Oh, you did work for a competitor, so we're suspending you on full pay," right? So I just thought, and I was marched out of the building, right, for this. So I just went, okay, fuck this, and just resigned. I was like, resigned, and then I was freelance.
Just stuck around in full pay to see what
And then I was but that's the thing. I call I've said to people, my career in my 20s was, I call it the Burning Bridges tour. If there was a point of principle and I had a full can of petrol and a match, I just kind of...
I'm the same.
Fuck this. See you later.
I got kicked out of 9 out of 11 of my last ad jobs. And not once was I kicked out by a client. I was kicked out because I was difficult and I was saying this is not the way to do things, and I was fighting against the sorrols. And you know, my parents said, don't burn your bridges. I said, fuck that. Like, burn your bridges if they need to be burned. And maybe they light a way, you know, for somebody else. As one quote.
What I found interesting as well, though, is that I've got back into some places just by being... Like, editor said to me recently, like one of my current editors said to me recently, they never have to edit my copy and it arrives on time and to length, right? So if you're good, you can sort of get away with stuff. If you're mediocre, you can't. On the other hand, I try to avoid having so many bust-ups now because I'd like a quieter life.
Well, I've gone to the point where I just realised actually what we were making is so irrelevant to life that there's absolutely no point. And it's getting worse and worse. So, like, you don't see... Most people think advertising is fucking schlock in of whatever creative business they're from, and it is. But you don't see, at least when you were growing up and when I was growing up, there were campaigns out there, you go, fuck, that is really good. Even if you weren't in the ad business, you go, that's really good. And now it's just, it's getting worse and worse and worse. Now maybe there'll be a renaissance.
We don't see those classic, like that classic Volkswagen campaign or anything like that.
Levi's 501s, all that kind of stuff, or the Audi.
There's now and then there's some good ones. But like...
Rare.
The other reality is, I think, and you would know more than me about this, but I think a lot of clever ads don't work that well anyway. Our creative agency is really new, and it's basically, it's me
let's talk
and my apprentice,
come back to the journalism.
But the thing I'm finding, the reason that we're doing okay with it, we're just starting to do okay, is that I just go in and I don't try and sell people on something. I try and sell them something that will work for them. Like, we're not an ad agency. We mainly do some social stuff. We do come up with broader campaign ideas.
Right?
Yeah.
So just talk a bit about what your vision is.
Seizing the means of production. So I got fed up with getting bounced out of, like, doing good work for places and either not getting the credit or just getting bounced out of other places. So thought I'll create my own kind of bucket for doing things. Mm-hmm. So it is a creative company in the sense that I have a novel coming out later in the year of my own. I'm still doing creative work of my own. We manage a guy called The Secret DJ who has a book out with Favour and Favour. So, you know, our projects are kind of wide. We're working with a charity called the Walnut Tree in Norfolk that works with veterans. Nerd Agency is a games developer that we're working with. So it's like a broad sense of things. But I don't do ads. We just come up with creative solutions for stuff. Yeah. It's like, okay, what... Sometimes just write blog posts for people. Ghostwrite things. Ghostwrite them for politicians and comedians, all sorts of stuff. I get sent proposals that people I know have been sent by other agencies, and they're like 50 pages, and they're like all this guff, right? I've never written a proposal that's more than 4 pages, and I just go, here's your problem, here's like 3 ways we could solve it, here's how much it would cost. Do you want that? And it's this thing with ads. I just look at ads. Do you know who does brilliant ads? It's like Aldi does brilliant ads. That thing of like, I like these ones, but I also like these ones. That's brilliant. Like, most people in advertising go, oh, well...
No, I mean, the problem is, as a school of thought in advertising, the more you complicate things, the more money you can charge a client. Yeah. The more pages you have, the more money you can charge your client. And the more like your competitors you make your clients' advertising, the less fired you're going to ever be. Whereas the answer, actually, for all those 3 things should be the opposite. Yeah. You know, you should be making braver work that doesn't look like your competitors, that stands out from your competitors. Might not always work. You need to be producing your stuff quickly and not taking huge amounts of time and pages to do it. And so, yeah, I mean, the ad industry is probably at its lowest ebb that it's ever been right now, because actually what's gone is all of the few and far between people who had genuine ability to make magic. And there were those people, and they're just dying.
There's one image, and it had been around years, obviously, because it was from the original punk era, but you know that cover of Sniffing Glue, right? It's Mark Perry's fanzine he made before he was in alternative TV, and it's this cover of Sniffing Glue magazine. It says, "Here are 3 chords, now form a band." Right. So when I think about a lot of industries, like the music industry, then was overcomplicating itself, both as an industry but also in music. Like prog is like advertising now is like prog, fucking keyboard solos everywhere, and it's the same thing in journalism. It's just like, oh, we have a certain way of doing things, we do it this way. I keep trying to think of like, okay, let's take it back. I've got 3 chords. I've got 3 colours. What can I do with 3 colours? Yeah. What can I like? What is the basic units of stuff that I can do to make this? I think we're in the greatest, like one of the greatest times ever for creating art, because frankly, if you want to be a musician now, you can do it. People don't like it because you can't be. You can't be a giant rock star necessarily as easy now. But you could be a working musician who makes good money now if you create good things and put it on the internet. Same thing with journalism. I don't think journalism is dead. I just think it's not sustainable in massive offices anymore.
I mean, we do the same with advertising in Ireland, particularly because there are huge budgets to do television. But I see, don't rule out television. Just lock off the camera. Yeah. You know, have a camera in a fucking room and lock it off, and you can't move the camera, but you can still put an ad in there. Like fucking that sometimes those little restraints suddenly opens up a medium.
You just have a frame, and you can have things come in and out of that frame. Like
and it opens a medium up to maybe a small advertiser that wouldn't normally be able to think of even television, because everyone automatically goes to it's going to be 150 grand to make it. And today we can make TV commercials with the 2 phones that are sitting on this desk.
Yeah, the trouble is the entrenched interests in these things make it really difficult. It's the same. I was just talking briefly before we started recording, and it was like I was just thinking about. This is a complete sort of tangent, but it sort of makes sense. It's like, I think a lot about the lobby system of political journalism in the UK, which is like, you know, there are lobby journalists who are accredited.
Describe what they are, lobby journalists.
So, yeah, they're accredited from publications, and the lobby journalists get the daily briefings from the Prime Minister's official spokesman, and they have offices in Westminster, and it's very, very cozy, right?
They're meant to behave a certain way.
Yeah, but it's, you know, and they get access, and a lot of journalism is about access, whether it's music journalism. Sports journalism is really bad for that now. John Motson was just on Desert Island Discs, and it was really interesting. He was talking about the interviews he did with like Brian Clough, for instance. He could get at Brian Clough, right? And it was quite back and forth. Yeah. Now, watch most football interviews, and they'll go, Jose, brilliantly played today.
Well, because we have really good players, we play well. My team does quite good.
Yeah, you're not going to
fight hard.
Yeah,
they don't fight hard. We win.
You're not going to say. Well, Jose, you said this the other day, right? And that was horseshit. What have you got to say about that? Because if you do,
Curiously, Jose is the one guy that might actually.
Yeah, but if you did that, there's like 50 Man United press officers who'll go, "You're fucking out, mate.
Yeah.
See you later." They'll tell your organisation, "We don't want to see that reporter again."
Yeah.
And if you're any newspaper,
so it's almost
you can't afford not to work with Man United.
It's public relations.
Yeah.
Basically,
people use that Orwell quote a lot. They say, journalism is printing things. People in power don't want to see everything else as public relations. It's kind of true, but.
So where do you stray into this? We're organically straying into all the
we've bounced all around.
Yeah, but the political journalists feel it. We started.
There are still some brilliant ones, by the way.
Yeah,
totally. But
we started talking about this, and the health of newspapers. I remember when I was living in New York, somebody said to me, "Well, if ever because I was there at the real fucking decline. I mean, I think it's sort of flatlined a little bit now to the extent where it's not hemorrhaging anymore in a lot of newspapers."
Well, Trump's been quite good for that.
Yes, indeed, especially for the New York Times. The failing New York Times.
Yeah.
But someone said to me, that if anything happened with the New York Times, there'd be 1,000 mainly Jewish people who would just go, "This paper will not die. We will put money into it."
Yeah.
People like Bloomberg and whatnot will make it happen.
Yeah.
And it will not die. And I still see, I had a funny incident where my friend from Sarajevo, I'm a godfather to his son, and his dad reads the Irish Times on an iPad every day. And when he came to Ireland, he saw the Irish Times newspaper. What's that? And he's only 10. He's like, "What the hell is that?" Right?
Yeah.
And he just couldn't. Why would they print this? This is gone tomorrow. The whole concept of a newspaper was.
It's like that joke about like a kid seeing a floppy disk and going, "Why has someone 3D printed the save button?" It's like
exactly. But so give me your kind of top line on whither journalism. Sorry, big question, but
well, look, I don't think it's going anywhere. I think new business models are forming. Reader supported is a good thing if you can get people to do that. Like the notion is, you'll never get people to pay, and I don't think that's true.
No.
Oddly enough, there's a generation growing up who've been used to watching YouTubers for free, but paying for things that those YouTubers do. So the present and future of journalism is about making things that people see value in and getting enough of those people to pay for it to balance out all the other people who don't pay for it. And the other thing I think is smaller organisations working together. The Guardian has broken a lot of stuff around Cambridge Analytica and around Aaron Banks, the UKIP funder and Vote Leave funder and stuff like this. But they've also been working with some smaller outfits, investigative outfits, like the investigative journalists being backed. Like there are ways of doing it, and we've still got to push further. If micropayments could be made to work in an effective way, that would be really good. Perhaps we should be looking at the license fee, the way the license fee works, and saying, okay, let's have a way where this money is distributed and you can tap into public sources of public money through independent boards or whatever that fund this stuff. Yeah. There's a load of different ways to do it. I don't think it's going to die. It's going to look different, but people will always want to tell stories. There will always be need for journalists. It's just the same thing as the music industry. You can't now think, I am going to get paid tons and tons of money and get to sit in a big office and have a big desk. Like the people who are really upset about the changes in journalism are the big desk people who really like being in big glass offices. And we just can't, that's not really sustainable anymore. If The Guardian hadn't wasted so much money on printing presses which were a folly and a building that they didn't need, they would be financially a lot better off. Because they sold Auto Trader and had millions and millions and millions of pounds and they pissed it away on stupid things.
I mean, I can see a time when the newspaper will print one paper a week on a Saturday.
A lot of places have done that.
And then you just move people. Like, the Irish Times is a very, very good newspaper. You probably read it when you were over there.
Yeah, I did.
And you
it has its flaws, but
well, I mean, politically, opinion-wise, sometimes it's a bit right-wing. But but it has got some great journalists in there. But if they had suddenly said, okay, we're going to have Monday and Thursday is going to be online only, and then that'll be Wednesday, and then before you know it, there's just but then really focus on that end of week.
If you made it a luxury product, and you made it can't be about news. It has to be about analysis. I'm not talking about opinion. Opinion's great. Opinion is fun.
Yeah.
And you need opinion because opinion is your fireworks, and you need some fireworks. But yeah, if you did that, it would work very well. I have a question for you. This is taking us on a slightly different tangent, but you were talking again before we started about the fact that you lived out of Ireland for a long time.
21 years.
So I lived in Ireland on and off from 2010 to 2017, roughly. So I was around for marriage ref, thinking about, right? And then now
Abortion.
the repeal the eighth, like, does it feel very different to you? Because it feels to me like it's a country shaking off the dust.
Yeah, we're a country that is trying our very best to de-guilt ourselves of the guilt that's pumped into us from when we were kids.
It does feel like whenever the dark well seems like it's been drained, there's more to be found. Like now you've got the adoption thing. Like it's like
there's
the depths of it.
Cervical screening thing that happened just after it as well. It is a patriarchal society that built from the foundation of the state in 1922. It was all about, not just here. We copy Britain mainly. This really awful treatment of women going back, and it's religion. There was really awful treatment of little boys by the priest. There was really awful treatment of.
Well, my ex-mother-in-law told a story to me once about like a priest coming. She thought he was coming up to the window of her car to ask her for directions, and he just said some really disgusting sexual stuff to her, and it's like, my God, like you're in the priest garb. Like, what are you doing? And the thing that I found really interesting, and it's fed into this thing of seeing how ignorant the British press is around the Irish border question and all these things is that when I was a kid, like, I loved Father Ted, right? Just loved it because it was on telly and it was funny, and it, like, Dougal was funny or whatever. But then when I moved to Ireland, and after living there for 2 or 3 years, it was like, suddenly, like, I'd like Roddy Doyle, and I'd read Ulysses at university, but then I spent a lot of time on the north side, right? Suddenly read Ulysses again and went, oh, this clicks in, it makes sense. So you stand in those markets on the north side.
I can't get my head into
but if you stand in those markets on the north side, right, listen to people that north, like, back and forth, and suddenly I was like, oh, I get the rhythm of this now. Father Ted suddenly made sense to me in ways it didn't before. I didn't know, for instance, about the Rose of Tralee till I lived in Ireland, right? And I wrote a thing for the Telegraph because I got obsessed with it, though, because I thought it was the most ridiculous thing. Like, on a positive side, the Late Late Toy Show is like my favourite thing, and I will pay for RTE Player every Christmas now just so I can watch the Late Late Toy Show because I think it's like the most wonderful Christmas thing. But everyone in Ireland knows everything about England, right? Because you get on from telly, right? Everybody knows what English people are like. English people, particularly English people, I keep the Scots and the Welsh out of this because they sort of come from a sort of shared Celtic existence, is that English people know fuck all about Ireland. And basically English people assume that Irish people are just English people with funny accents, right? The layers of slang, the kind of, something like the Rubber Bandits can only exist from Ireland because it's like this kind of radical punchback against a repressive culture. But,
that's the reason, though. I mean, the reason is that so many picked up the gun to fight Britain, England, and many picked up the pen. So, what I say is you don't see the same calibre or quality or depth, strength and depth of writers in Scotland. And we are very like the Scots. They have Robbie Burns and Billy Connolly and a few others. There's lots more. But, I mean, in the World Cup of writing, we will knock Scotland out in the first or second round.
Well, in the World Cup of culture, Ireland punches so beyond its weight. It's insane.
But so much of it was using playwriting, using poetry, using comedy, using music to foment culture against a common enemy, against Britain, getting it out. The irony of this whole fucking thing is we might get a united Ireland. We're almost like going, no, we can't get it this way. We can't, by some European thing. You can have it. No, we've been fighting for this. We need the British to be walking down a gangplank over to, it could happen.
It's utterly bizarre but I got so angry at a lot of the reporting, even from normally decent reporters around Repeal the Eighth. When you read the reporting here, it was so fiddly-diddly-dee, look at the Irish type thing. And it was just...
But by the way, that's fair.
Yeah, in a way, but it was kind of... It's just badly written because fundamentally, there are British political reporters who honestly don't understand and have never bothered to look into where do Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael come from. Like, what is... Like, go back to the Civil War or whatever, do the roots, understand that
Irish... They should be merged. They should have merged years ago.
Well, they should. But this notion of, like, Irish politics as a kind of analogue to ours, because what was easy to do around when Bertie was around was you look him and Brian Cowan and go, well, Bertie's the Blair and Cowan's the Brown, and you can't do that because it doesn't work.
Well, I have a theory that the British, when I was growing up, the British parliamentary parties of the 80s, Thatcher governments, that they were very formidable, very smart people. They were kind of dangerous. They were like Norman Tebbit, Judge Dredd, all these kind of and they were also a bit fucking sleazy because they were always getting caught with their pants down, getting whipped by prostitutes. It was all very weird. Ours were all stupid failed businessmen with the comb overs and the bacon face who did nothing. Our new politicians that are coming out, I get goosebumps by, because it's not just Varadkar, it's in his cabinet, not just in Fine Gael. Josepha Madigan, even Sinn Féin is starting to look like it could fucking do something in government with Mary Lou McDonald. But we've now got a confidence in our politics and in our politicians. I look at England and we're going, what the fuck is going on?
Sure, I have a huge problem with Varadkar though, because that was another one in the reporting that did my head in a bit, because you go, Ireland's first gay Taoiseach. Yeah. Great step in many ways. The guy had just spent the past couple of years doing horrible things to benefit claimants.
Right.
He's
What's
not a good man yourself, Leo.
What's happening with him is he was Minister for Health. He's now Taoiseach, and he's got to listen to the. My joke was, he said I was away. I left in '96. When I come back in 2016 late, the same 5 problems that were problems. Major social issues, need for education reform, need for health reform, people waiting on trolleys,
homelessness,
10,000 people homeless, inaction from government, or any action they do, they fuck it up and it costs the country even triple what they did. They're all in play today, and this guy is starting to change. He's a very right-wing kind of, doesn't do poor people very well, doesn't look after the social side of things.
He's no man of the people.
He's working that. Working that. But we're all kind of a bit proud of him because he's doing okay. He's boxing away, but he's also young. And yes, he is gay. And yes, he is a migrant. But anything can come after him.
That's the great thing. It is I would love to be an Irish citizen. I was in Ireland long enough that I could have done it. I might go back and do it again because I love a republic. I think the recent run of presidents have been excellent. Michael D is an excellent president because he's
going to run for another 4 years now. So he's getting quite old, but he's going to do it.
I hope he does. He's like a giant. He's like a giant owl. He's like a little owl. I like him a lot.
He's good on culture. He's a poet himself, And
he's an intelligent man. Yeah. He can speak. He represents the country well.
Yeah.
The Marys did as well.
But this is the difference between what we don't have to labour this, but when you're talking about British journalism, you were living there. I don't know. I certainly don't. I'm sure there are some, but there may not be on the ground journalists working in Ireland for Britain.
There's a few. A lot of them come from the north. Like there's a guy, Jason Walsh, who I like a lot, but he grew up in the north, lived in Dublin quite a long time. He's great, but then of course he grew up in the north, so to be honest, if I was running a paper and I wanted a correspondent, I'd get someone from the north to be reported, because someone from the north will understand the north view and they can understand the Republic view.
Yeah.
But to look at the Republic and not get that it's this and also the thing I didn't get, there's so many things I didn't get till I lived in Ireland, but the differences between the counties and the way people think of themselves as a mayor man or it's
language accent.
Yeah, one of the most beautiful things I thought was All Ireland final day and just watching all the fans from 2 different teams and then not needing to be policing to keep them separate. No. It's a good day. Yeah. People are gonna have the crack, talk shit at each other, but there's no violence in it.
Never. Where do you stand on Brexit?
It's a crucially terrible idea. I think that...
Do you think it's going to happen? I don't think it's going to happen.
I don't think it's going to happen, but it's going to cause a lot of trouble. It's insane to me how bad the Remain campaign was. They shouldn't have lost. There clearly was shenanigans going on the Leave side, which is horrendous. I knew it was going to happen because I grew up in a non-London part of the country and had spent my time...
Yeah.
And was watching from outside the country. I flew over to vote to stay in, but I'd grown up outside London, and I knew it was going to happen. And the political journalists who didn't know it was going to happen hadn't spent enough time. Yeah. Of course, they went out and talk in places, but they don't talk enough, and they kind of. It's a mess.
Mm. Where you have your new business? Where do you see and you have a novel? Did you say?
Yeah.
We'll put some links to some of your writing.
Novel's coming out when I need to make a video it's coming out with Unbound, and I need to make a video to tell people to pre-order it, and I haven't made the video yet.
What's
and then
it
it'll
about?
come out. It's about an artist who is painting an actress that he first painted when he was still at art school. So she's in her 50s, he's in his 30s. There's a spark between them, but can that work? Because she's very famous. She's like Liz Taylor famous,
right.
And she's had these two husbands who were, and she's not going to have a kid with him. So like, how's that going to work? And it's about their families. It's about secrets. And I don't know. I was told by one publisher, it's a great book, Mick, but only gays and women will read it. And I thought, well, I wrote it, and I'm neither a woman nor gay. Like, not that would matter, but like, it's
also a huge audience.
Thing about
What's
that.
the name of the book?
It's called The Pleasure of Sinking.
Okay, well,
so, yeah.
we may even sync this with the launch of that.
Who knows? Yeah.
What do you say to your younger self if you go back? If you had to say something to your younger self, given what you've endured now of your life.
I would like to say to my younger self, the lows that you have are a thing, and they're something that you can address, and you should address it earlier, because I think it's very confusing when you're in your late teens, early 20s, and you are emotionally up and down as much as I was. That would be it. I mean, job-wise, people say, go back and say, don't burn your bridges. I do the same. I do exactly. Because I felt morally fired up about those things, and I also younger me would tell me to fuck off anyway. So it's like
younger you would burn a bridge to you.
yeah. I don't think younger me would listen. I'm much better at taking advice now. I think on my 30th birthday, day after that, I was sitting with a hangover, and I just thought to myself, God, all the things I don't know. There are so many things I don't know, and that was the transition point between my 20s and 30s, because I went. It was so freeing as a thought, because since then I've been way better at asking for advice and help and just thinking, and when I don't know something, just going, I don't know, yeah. I've got a clue. And it was so much better. In my 20s, I was like, I know everything. I am the king of everything. And it's like, fuck all,
Trust me, you will continue to mellow. I'm about to hit 50. It was great talking to you. Keep writing and keep blowing up bridges and burning them down.
Real pleasure, man. Thank you so much.
Take care of yourself.
Cheers.